Picture this, you're 6 months pregnant, standing in your own home, while your husband's family tries to humiliate you. Your husband says nothing. His mistress smiles. You think it can't get worse. Then you find out she's been poisoning you, planning your death. And your husband knew. I'm Grace. This is my true story of survival, revenge, and rebuilding. 60 minutes that will change how you see betrayal forever. If you stay until the end, you'll discover the hidden room, the shocking twist, and how I got everything back. Like this video if you believe survivors deserve to be heard. Comment your thoughts. Share with someone fighting their own battle. Subscribe for more stories of strength. Let's dive in. I invited my husband's mistress to live in our home. I just didn't know it yet. The discovery came on a Tuesday morning in March, when I found a hidden door in my own house. Behind it, a room I'd never seen. Walls covered in photographs of me. Plans written in careful handwriting detailing how I would die. But I'm getting ahead of myself. This story begins 3 months earlier, on a cold December night when everything still seemed perfect. My name is Grace Whitmore, and I was living what most people would call a dream life. At 32, I ran a successful interior design business in Greenwich, Connecticut. My husband Derek owned a tech startup that had just secured Series B funding. We lived in a sprawling lakeside mansion that had been in his family for 3 generations, and I was 5 months pregnant with our first child. The exhaustion hit me harder than I expected. Morning sickness that lasted all day, swollen ankles by noon. The business demands didn't stop just because I was growing a human being. I had 3 major projects running simultaneously, each one requiring site visits, client meetings, vendor coordination. Derek noticed me struggling, or so I thought. "Honey, you need help," he said one evening as I collapsed onto our leather sofa, too tired to even take off my shoes. "You can't keep doing this to yourself." "I'm fine," I insisted, though we both knew it was a lie. "Let me hire someone, a home organizer, someone to manage the household stuff so you can focus on the business and the baby." He knelt beside me, his hand gentle on my swollen belly. "Please, for our daughter's sake." The way he said daughter melted my resistance. We just found out we were having a girl. Derek had been so excited, already planning her nursery, talking about teaching her to sail on the lake. "Okay," I agreed, "but I want to meet them first." Vanessa Crane arrived 2 days later. She was beautiful in that effortless way some women achieve. 28 years old, with chestnut hair pulled into a sleek ponytail and intelligent gray eyes. She wore simple clothes, a cream sweater and dark jeans, but everything about her radiated competence. "Mrs. Whitmore, it's wonderful to meet you," she said, her handshake firm and warm. "Derek has told me so much about you." Something in that sentence felt off. Derek has told me so much. Not your husband or Mr. Whitmore. Derek. But I was exhausted, and Vanessa came with glowing references. Within an hour of walking through the house, she'd identified inefficiencies I hadn't noticed, suggested systems that would save me hours each week, offered to coordinate with my business assistant so nothing fell through the cracks. "You've thought of everything," I said, impressed despite my initial reservation. "That's what I do," Vanessa replied with a smile. "I see what people need before they know they need it." She started the next day. Within a week, Vanessa had transformed our household. Meals appeared at regular times. My dry cleaning was picked up and returned. The house was cleaner than it had been in months. She managed vendor schedules for my design projects, coordinated deliveries, even handled some client communications. Derek seemed happier too. He smiled more, laughed at dinner, asked about my day with genuine interest. I thought maybe the stress of my pregnancy had been affecting him too. And now with Vanessa's help, we could both breathe easier. I should have paid attention to the small things. The way Vanessa knew where the extra linens were kept without asking. How she'd restocked my favorite tea before I mentioned we were running low. The fact that she wore the same perfume I did, a custom blend from a tiny shop in Manhattan that Derek had given me for our anniversary. My best friend Bryn noticed during her first visit. "She's a little too perfect, don't you think?" Bryn asked as we sat in my home office while Vanessa organized the pantry downstairs. Bryn Sullivan had been my friend since college, an investigative journalist with instincts that rarely failed her. "She's efficient," I defended. "That's what we're paying her for. Grace, she's wearing your perfume. It's a popular scent. From that boutique in Soho that makes custom blends, the one where Derek proposed to you. Bryn's dark eyebrows rose. That popular. I felt the first cold tendril of doubt curl around my chest. You think I'm being paranoid? I think you should trust your gut. Bryn squeezed my hand. And your gut is telling you something's wrong, or we wouldn't be having this conversation. That night, I paid closer attention, watched how Derek and Vanessa interacted. They were professional, appropriate, but there was an ease between them that bothered me. Like they'd known each other longer than 3 weeks. I started looking for evidence. Checked Derek's phone while he had showered, but it was password protected with a new code. Logged into our phone records online and found a second line I didn't recognize, with hundreds of texts to a single number. My hands shook as I scrolled through the bill. The text had started 6 months ago, long before Vanessa arrived, long before Derek suggested we needed help. I confronted him at dinner the next evening. Vanessa was there, as she often was lately, joining us for meals she'd prepared. Derek, we need to talk. My voice came out steadier than I felt. About the second phone line on our account. His fork paused halfway to his mouth. Vanessa's eyes flicked to his face, then back to her plate. What second line? Derek asked, his expression confused. The one with 800 texts to the same number in the last 6 months. Grace? He set down his fork, his voice gentle, patronizing. Honey, that's a work line for the startup. You know how paranoid our investors are about security? Then why didn't you tell me about it? Because you're pregnant and stressed, and I did not want to add more to your plate. He reached for my hand. I pulled away. Sweetheart, I think you're letting pregnancy hormones get the better of you. Heat flooded my face. Don't you dare blame this on hormones. I'm not blaming anything. I'm just saying. He glanced at Vanessa, who was studying her plate with careful neutrality. Vanessa, could you help Grace upstairs? I think she needs to rest. I don't need rest. I need answers. But Derek had already stood, pulling on his jacket. I have a meeting with investors. We'll talk about this when you're calmer. He left, just walked out, leaving me trembling with anger and Vanessa sitting across the table, sympathy carefully arranged on her face. Mrs. Whitmore, she said softly, can I get you anything? Some tea? I know this must be overwhelming. I looked at her, really looked at her, at the way she sat in my dining room, wearing my perfume, having just watched my marriage crack open like an egg. Who are you? I whispered. Her smile never wavered. I'm just someone trying to help. That night, I lay awake in the master bedroom while Derek slept in the guest wing. At 2 a.m, I heard laughter, low voices drifting up from below. I crept to the hallway, my heart pounding, followed the sound to the guest wing. Through the cracked door, I saw them, Derek and Vanessa, sitting close on the sofa, wine glasses in hand, his hand on her knee, her head tilted toward his, intimate and familiar. I must have made a sound because Derek looked up. Our eyes met. Grace, he stood quickly, smoothing his shirt. We were just planning your baby shower. It's supposed to be a surprise. Go back to bed. Vanessa's smile was soft, understanding. We wanted it to be perfect for you. Every instinct screamed that I was being lied to, but I was tired, pregnant, and suddenly doubting everything I thought I knew. I went back to bed, but I didn't sleep. And in the morning, I called the one person who might help me find the truth. Owen Hartley's law office occupied the top floor of a chrome and glass building in downtown Greenwich. I'd used him once before when setting up my design business. He was sharp, discreet, and most importantly, he didn't ask unnecessary questions. Grace, he stood when his assistant showed me in, genuine concern crossing his face. At 40, Owen had the kind of presence that made clients feel both protected and slightly intimidated. You sounded urgent on the phone. What's going on? I sat in the leather chair across from his mahogany desk, my hands folded over my belly. I need you to audit my husband's finances. Quietly. Owen's expression didn't change, but I saw the calculation in his eyes. That's a serious request. What am I looking for? I don't know yet. Maybe nothing. I took a breath. Maybe everything. I told him about Vanessa, the second phone line, the perfume, the late-night conversations. Owen listened without interrupting, taking notes in his precise handwriting. How long have you been married? He asked when I finished. 4 years. Prenuptial agreement. The question hit me like cold water. Yes, Derek's family insisted. I tried to remember the details, but it had been our wedding week. Everything was a blur of champagne and happiness. I signed it at the rehearsal dinner, had a few drinks to calm my nerves. Owen's jaw tightened. You signed a prenup while intoxicated. I trusted him, his family. I didn't think, let me get a copy of that agreement. And Grace, he leaned forward. Until we know what we're dealing with, don't confront Derek again. Don't let on that you're investigating. Can you do that? I nodded, though the thought of pretending everything was fine made me want to scream. Meanwhile, Bryn was conducting her own investigation. As an investigative journalist, she had resources I didn't. Databases, contacts, ways of finding information that stayed hidden from ordinary searches. She called me 3 days later. Grace, you need to come to my apartment. Now. Don't tell Derek where you're going. The drive to Bryn's place in Manhattan took 40 minutes. She lived in a converted loft in Tribeca, all exposed brick and industrial windows. When she opened the door, her face was pale. Tell me, I said. Bryn pulled me inside, closing the door firmly. Her laptop sat open on the dining table, surrounded by printed documents. Vanessa Crane doesn't exist. At least, not the version you know. What do you mean, the social security number on her background check? It belongs to a woman who died 10 years ago in Ohio. The references Derek provided. All fake. The phone numbers go to disconnected lines. My legs felt weak. I sank into one of Bryn's chairs. Then who is she? That's where it gets interesting. Bryn pulled up a photograph on her laptop. A much younger Vanessa, maybe 16, standing beside a tall man with silver hair. Her real name is Vanessa Whitmore. The world tilted. Whitmore, like Derek's family. Exactly like Derek's family. Because that man in the photo bio, Bryn tapped the screen. That's Harrison Whitmore, your father-in-law, and Vanessa is his daughter. I stared at the image, my mind racing. Derek's sister, but he's an only child. Harrison and Cecilia only had legitimate children. Bryn finished. Vanessa is the product of an affair Harrison had 30 years ago. He paid her mother to disappear, to never contact the family. But the mother died 5 years ago, and Vanessa has been planning this ever since. Planning what? Revenge, recognition, money, maybe all three. Bryn pulled up more documents. Court records, financial statements, old news articles. She's been stalking your family for years. Grace, learning everything about you, waiting for the right moment. The room felt too small, the air too thin. The affair, Derek and Vanessa, is it real? Bryn's expression softened. I don't think so. At least, not in the way you're imagining. I think she's blackmailing him, threatening to expose the family secret unless he helps her get what she wants. Relief and horror flooded through me in equal measure. Derek wasn't cheating, but he was lying, hiding his half-sister in our home, keeping secrets that could destroy everything. I need to talk to him, I said, standing. Grace, wait, let's think this through. But I was already heading for the door. I'd spent weeks doubting myself, questioning my sanity, wondering if pregnancy hormones were making me paranoid. Now I had proof, answers, and I was going to get the truth from my husband. I drove back to Greenwich faster than I should have, my hands tight on the wheel. Called Derek's cell. It went to voicemail. Called the house. No answer. When I pulled into our circular driveway, both Derek's car and Vanessa's were there. Lights blazed in the study. I walked in without knocking. They were sitting together behind Derek's desk, papers spread between them. Both looked up as I entered. Grace, Derek said, surprise crossing his face. I thought you were having dinner with Bryn. I know who she is. I looked at Vanessa. I know you're Harrison's daughter, Derek's half-sister. I know this whole arrangement is a lie. Silence fell like a stone. Vanessa's face remained calm, but Derek's went white. Grace, let me explain. Yes, explain, do you? I crossed my arms over my belly. Explain why your illegitimate sister is living in our home. Explain why you've been lying to me for months. Explain all of it. Derek stood, his hands raised in a placating gesture. She's blackmailing me, threatening to expose Dad's affair, to ruin the family name unless I help her. Help her what? Get what's rightfully mine, Vanessa said quietly. She stood too, her gray eyes meeting mine without shame. Your husband's family owes me 30 years of acknowledgement, of support, of the life I should have had. So you manipulated your way into our home, made me think I was going crazy. I did what I had to do. Vanessa's voice remained steady. You have everything, Grace, a name, a family, security. I had nothing, just a dead mother and a father who pretended I didn't exist. Something in her words struck a chord, the pain underneath the anger. For a moment, I almost felt sympathy. Then Derek spoke, and everything shattered. Grace, I'm sorry and I wanted to tell you, but I couldn't risk it. We've been working on a settlement. Vanessa gets a portion of the family estate, and in exchange, she stays quiet about the affair. It's almost done, just a few more weeks, and this will all be over. A few more weeks, I repeated. And then what? She'd disappear. We pretend none of this happened. Yes. Derek reached for my hand. I let him take it, feeling the familiar warmth of his touch. I know I should have told you, but I was trying to protect you, protect our family. I looked between them. My husband, who'd lied to my face for months, his half-sister, who'd invaded our home and our lives, and suddenly I was so tired of being angry. Fine, I said. If this is almost over, then we finish it together. No more secrets, no more lies. We handle this as a family. And then Vanessa gets what she needs and leaves. Relief flooded Derek's face. Thank you, God, Grace. Thank you for understanding. Vanessa nodded slowly. You're more reasonable than I expected. We shook hands, made plans, set up a meeting with Harrison and the family attorneys. For the first time in weeks, I felt like maybe, just maybe, we could get through this. I should have known better. The meeting was scheduled for Friday evening in Harrison's downtown office. Derek, Vanessa, me, Harrison, and the family attorney. We'd present the settlement, get everyone's signatures, and end this nightmare. I got ready carefully that evening. Wore a navy dress that accommodated my growing belly. Put on the diamond earrings Derek had given me for our first anniversary. Told myself everything would be okay. We arrived together, Derek driving, Vanessa in the back seat. The elevator ride to the 20th floor felt endless. My heart pounded against my ribs. Harrison was already there, seated behind his massive desk. He looked older than I remembered, his silver hair thinner, his face lined with stress. The attorney, a severe woman named Patricia Combs, sat beside him with a thick folder. Let's get this over with, Harrison said without preamble. Vanessa, the settlement is ready. $2 million, paid over 5 years. In exchange, you sign a non-disclosure agreement and relinquish all claims to the Whitmore name and estate. That's not the arrangement we discussed, Vanessa said calmly. Derek frowned. What, Vanessa? We agreed. You agreed. She turned to him, and I saw something flicker in her eyes, something cold and calculating. I never signed anything, and I've changed my mind. My stomach dropped. What are you talking about? I want recognition, legal acknowledgement as Harrison's daughter, and a full share of the inheritance. Vanessa's voice remained steady, but steel ran underneath. Equal to Derek's. That's impossible, Harrison growled. You're not a legitimate heir. Then I'll make our relationship very public. The affair, the payoffs, the years of lies. Vanessa pulled out her phone. Well, I have documents, photos, emails between you and my mother. Everything the press would love. Patricia leaned forward. That's extortion. Miss Crane? No. It's negotiation. Vanessa smiled. And Derek is going to support me. Aren't you, brother? Everyone looked at Derek. He sat frozen, his face pale. Derek, I said softly, tell her no. He didn't speak. Derek, I repeated, my voice rising. Tell her this is over. Finally, boss, he looked at me, and what I saw in his eyes made my blood run cold. Grace, I'm sorry, but she's right. She deserves a share. What? The word came out as a whisper. Derek stood, moving to stand beside Vanessa. My father wronged her. Our family wronged her. She's been planning this for years. And you know what? She's earned it. I couldn't breathe. couldn't process what I was hearing. You're siding with her against me against your own father. I'm siding with what's right. Derek pulled a folder from his briefcase. And I'm also siding with reality. Grace, our marriage was never permanent. It was for optics. My family needed me settled, respectable. You were perfect for that. But now, he placed the folder in front of me. Now we need to be realistic. My hands shook as I opened it. Divorce papers. Already drawn up. Already dated. The prenup is very clear, Patricia said, her voice professional and cold. In the event of divorce, you receive no assets acquired during the marriage. That includes your design business, which Derek funded, the house, the cars, the investments. Everything stays with the Whitmore family. No, I looked at Derek, tears blurring my vision. You can't do this. I'm carrying your child, and you'll have generous child support. Vanessa leaned back in her chair, perfectly relaxed. But let's be honest. Grace, did you really think a man like Derek would choose you? A middle-class interior designer with no family? No connections? She tilted her head, false sympathy on her face. You were always temporary. The room spun. I gripped the edge of the desk, trying to stay upright. Sign the papers, Derek said. We'll make this as painless as possible. And if I don't, then we make it very painful. Vanessa answered. We fight for custody, present evidence of your instability, your mood swings, your paranoia, your threats against Derek. She gestured to her phone. All recorded. By the way, very concerning behavior for a new mother. I looked at Harrison. You're letting them do this. The old man wouldn't meet my eyes. It's family business. Grace, you were never really family. Something inside me shattered. Not just my heart, my entire understanding of the world, of trust, of love. I need time, I managed to say. Time to think. You have 24 hours, Patricia said. After that, we file for emergency custody based on mental instability. I stood on shaking legs, walked to the elevator on autopilot. The doors closed on Derek's face, on Vanessa's satisfied smile, on the ruins of my life. In the parking garage, I sat in my car and screamed. Screamed until my throat was raw, until I couldn't scream anymore. Then I called Owen Hartley and told him we were going to war. Owen met me at his office at 11 that night. He took one look at my face and poured 2 glasses of scotch, pushing one across the desk before remembering I was pregnant. He drank them both. Tell me everything, he said. I did. Every word of the meeting. The divorce papers, the threats, Vanessa's cold smile, Derek's betrayal. When I finished, Owen was quiet for a long moment. Then he opened his laptop and pulled up files he'd been compiling. I've been digging into Derek's finances, he said. Grace, your husband is in serious trouble. The startup is failing. He's been embezzling from the company to cover personal debts. If his investors find out, he'll face criminal charges. So that's why he needs Vanessa, I said slowly. She has access to Harrison's money. This was never about acknowledgement. It's about saving himself. Exactly. Owen pulled up more documents. And this prenup, you signed it, but there are grounds to challenge it. You were intoxicated. You didn't have independent counsel, and the terms are unconscionable. You could fight. Hope flickered. How long would that take? Months, maybe years. And in the meantime, they'll file for custody of your daughter. Owen's expression was grim. Grace, I have to be honest with you. The recording Vanessa mentioned, the evidence of instability, it might be fabricated, but it'll be convincing enough for a temporary custody hearing, especially given Derek's family connections. The hope died. So I lose no matter what. Not necessarily. We need our own evidence, something that proves Derek and Vanessa are the dangerous ones, not you. How do we get that? Owen smiled, sharp and dangerous. We set a trap. The plan was simple but risky. I would pretend to agree to the divorce, sign the papers, move out, act defeated. Meanwhile, Owen would hire a private investigator to watch the house. We'd catch Derek and Vanessa doing something illegal, something we could use to regain leverage. It's a long shot, Owen admitted, but it's what we've got. I signed the papers the next afternoon, in Patricia's cold office. Derek was there, Vanessa beside him. They watched me scrawl my name on form after form, surrendering my home, my business, my life. The house will be cleared out for you by Monday, Patricia said. You can collect your personal belongings then. Where am I supposed to go, Peter? I asked, hating how small my voice sounded. That's not our concern. Vanessa stood, smoothing her skirt. But Derek has arranged for your business assets to be transferred back, as a gesture of goodwill. You can start over. How generous, I said bitterly. Derek wouldn't look at me, just signed his own papers and left. I moved into Bryn's apartment that night. She helped me carry boxes up 3 flights of stairs, her anger a palpable thing. I'm going to destroy them, she muttered, slamming a box of clothes onto the floor. I'm going to write an article that ruins them. Not yet, I said. We need proof first. The private investigator, a woman named Julia Reed, installed cameras outside the mansion the next day. They were legal, mounted on public property, capturing the front entrance and driveway. Not enough to see inside, but enough to monitor who came and went. For 3 days, nothing happened. Derek went to work. Vanessa stayed at the house. They ordered takeout, lived their lives in the home that used to be mine. Then, on the 4th night, Julia called. Grace, you need to see this. She sent me a video file. I opened it on Bryn's laptop. The footage showed Derek and Vanessa arguing in the driveway, their voices raised. The audio was tinny, but clear. This wasn't the plan, Derek was saying. You said we'd split everything 50-50. Now you're talking about taking full control. Plans change, Vanessa replied. You're a liability. Derek, the embezzlement, the startup failures. I can't have you dragging down the family assets. I'm your brother. You're my meal ticket. There's a difference. Vanessa stepped closer. And here's the new plan. You stay out of my way, or I tell everyone what you did. The fraud, the affairs, all of it. You wouldn't try me. The video ended. I sat back, my heart racing. We have her. She admitted to blackmail. It's not enough, Owen said when I showed him. It proves she's manipulative, but not dangerous. We need more. More came 2 days later, in the worst way possible. I woke at 3 in the morning to cramping, sharp, intense pain that radiated through my lower back. I stumbled to the bathroom and saw blood. Bryn, I called, my voice shaking. Bryn, something's wrong. She drove me to the hospital going 20 miles over the speed limit. I was admitted immediately, rushed into an exam room. The doctor's face was grave. You're going into premature labor, she said. We're going to try to stop it, but at 26 weeks if we can't. My baby, I whispered. Please save my baby. They tried. Medications, bed rest, every intervention available. But my body had decided it was done. 12 hours later, I delivered a tiny girl weighing just over 2 pounds. They named her Lily. I only saw her for a moment before they whisked her away to the NICU. So small, so fragile, tubes and Mars covering her body. She's a fighter, the neonatal doctor told me. But the next 72 hours are critical. I sat beside Lily's incubator, my hand through the opening, one finger stroking her impossibly small hand. Bryn had gone to get coffee. I was alone. That's when my phone rang. Derek. I heard this, he said when I answered. Grace, I'm sorry. Is she okay? Why do you care? Bitterness flooded my voice. She's just leverage for custody now, right? That's not fair. Nothing about this is fair. I hung up, but Derek wasn't done. 2 hours later, hospital security found me, a man in a suit holding papers. Grace Whitmore, you've been served. Emergency custody petition. Derek and Vanessa were suing for full custody of Lily, claiming I was mentally unstable and had neglected my health during pregnancy, leading to premature birth. I read the documents through tears. They had evidence. Statements from doctors I'd never seen. Photos of me looking disheveled. Records of concerning behavior. All fabricated. All convincing. The hearing was scheduled for the following week. They can't do this, Bryn said when she returned. She's in the NICU. You haven't even brought her home. They're claiming I'm unfit to bring her home at all. I looked at my daughter through the plastic walls, and I don't have money for a good attorney. Owen's doing this pro bono, But Derek has Patricia Combs and the entire Whitmore legal team. Then we find evidence faster. But evidence wasn't coming fast enough. The custody hearing arrived before I was ready. I stood before a judge, Owen beside me, and watched as Patricia Combs presented a case that painted me as paranoid, unstable, and dangerous. Miss Whitmore has a history of erratic behavior, Patricia said. Baseless accusations against her husband, threats, stress-induced complications that led to premature birth. My clients are concerned for the child's safety. Your Honor, Owen argued, there's no credible evidence of mental instability. Grace was responding rationally to a legitimate conspiracy against her. A conspiracy she can't prove, Patricia countered. While we have medical records, witness statements, and recordings of threatening behavior, the judge reviewed the files. When she looked up, my heart sank. Given the child's fragile condition and the concerns presented, I'm granting temporary custody to Derek Whitmore. Grace Whitmore will have supervised visitation only, pending a full psychological evaluation. No, I whispered. Please, no. But the gavel had already fallen. They took my daughter, right there, with paperwork that authorized the NICU to release Lily only to Derek. I was allowed one final visit, supervised by a social worker. I stood over Lily's incubator, tears falling onto the plastic. I'm so sorry, baby. Mama's going to fix this, I promise. But I had no idea how. Outside the courthouse, Bryn had to physically hold me up. Owen was on his phone, barking orders to his investigators. Reporters had somehow gotten wind of the story and surrounded us. Mrs. Whitmore, is it true you threatened your husband? One called. Grace, are you mentally stable? Shouted another. I pushed through them, Bryn shielding me. We made it to her car and she drove. Just drove, no destination, while I fell apart in the passenger seat. I've lost everything, I said. My home, my business, my daughter, everything. Not everything. Bryn's voice was hard. You still have the truth, and we're going to find a way to prove it. But I couldn't see how. Derek and Vanessa held all the cards, the money, the power, the connections. What did I have? Then my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Meet me at Riverside Park, East Entrance. Come alone. I have information about Vanessa. I showed Bryn. It could be a trap, or it could be our only shot. I looked at her. I'm going. Riverside Park was quiet at dusk, the winter air sharp with cold. I walked to the east entrance, my coat pulled tight, scanning for whoever had sent the message. A man stepped out from behind a tree, young, maybe 30, with nervous eyes. He looked familiar. Travis, I said, recognizing Derek's business partner. What are you doing here, saving what's left of my conscience? Travis Mead replied. Grace, I need to tell you something about Vanessa. Something Derek doesn't even know. Why are you helping me? Because what they're doing is wrong. And because if I don't stop them now, I'm complicit. Travis pulled out a flash drive. This has evidence. Financial records showing Vanessa has been blackmailing Harrison for years. She's been planning this takeover from the beginning. Derek's just a pawn. I took the drive with shaking hands. What's on here? Proof that Vanessa poisoned your prenatal vitamins. The world stopped. What? She's been systematically making you sick, causing complications. The premature labor wasn't stress. Grace, it was attempted murder. I couldn't breathe, couldn't think. My baby. She hurt my baby. And she'll do it again if we don't stop her. Travis gripped my shoulders. But you need to listen carefully. Vanessa is dangerous. More dangerous than any of us realized. If she finds out I gave you this, a car screeched around the corner. Vanessa's sedan. She jumped out, her face twisted with rage. Travis, she called. Step away from her. Now. Run, Travis said. Take the drive and run. I ran. I didn't stop running until I reached Bryn's apartment. Burst through the door, gasping. The flash drive clutched in my fist. What happened? Bryn was on her feet immediately. Vanessa poisoned me, made me sick, made me lose. I couldn't finish the sentence. Couldn't say the words that would make it real. Bryn took the flash drive and plugged it into her laptop. Files opened. Bank records, chemical supply orders, medical documents showing toxic levels of substances in my prenatal vitamins, and photos. Dozens of photos of me, taken over months, walking into doctor's appointments, at the grocery store, in my own home, a stalking record going back 2 years. She's been planning this since before she showed up at your door, Bryn said, her voice hollow. Grace, this is attempted murder, conspiracy, stalking. We can end her with this. Give it to Owen, to the police, to everyone. My hands shook with rage so profound I could barely speak. I want her destroyed. Owen received the files within the hour. By morning, he'd presented them to the police. By afternoon, a detective was at Bryn's apartment. Detective Sarah Collins was mid-40s, sharp-eyed and thorough. She listened to my story, reviewed the evidence, and nodded slowly. This is substantial, she said. I'm opening an investigation into Vanessa Whitmore. We'll need your testimony, but with this evidence, I'm confident we can bring charges. What about my daughter? I asked. Can we reverse the custody order? Once charges are filed, we can petition for emergency custody revision. It'll take a few days, but yes. Detective Collins closed her notebook. Miss Whitmore, I promise you, we're going to make this right. Hope bloomed in my chest. Real hope. Finally, the custody appeal was scheduled for the following Friday. Owen filed the motion, attached the new evidence, and requested emergency review. The judge will see this is different from the last hearing, he assured me. You have proof now, real proof of criminal behavior. I let myself believe him, let myself imagine bringing Lily home, safe and protected. That was my mistake. The hearing began at 9 a.m. I sat beside Owen at the plaintiff's table, dressed in my best suit, looking as stable and competent as possible. Derek and Vanessa sat across the aisle with Patricia. The judge reviewed the new evidence, frowned, looked up. Miss Whitmore, you've presented serious allegations. Detective Collins has confirmed an ongoing investigation. However, that word made my stomach drop. The defense has provided counter evidence that gives me pause. Patricia stood, smooth and confident. Your Honor, we have audio recordings of Miss Whitmore making explicit threats against my clients. We'd like to present them now. Objection, Owen said immediately. We've seen no such recordings in discovery. They were just uncovered yesterday. We filed a motion to present new evidence. The judge nodded. I'll allow it. Patricia played the audio. My voice, clear and unmistakable, saying terrible things. I'm going to kill Derek. I'm going to make him pay for what he's done. Vanessa needs to disappear. Permanently. They won't take my baby. I'll burn the whole house down first. I sat frozen, listening to myself threaten murder. Except I'd never said those words. Never even thought them. Your Honor, this is fabricated. Owen objected. This is AI-generated audio using voice sampling. Do you have proof it's fabricated? Patricia asked smoothly. Do you have proof it's authentic? Owen shot back. The judge held up a hand. Enough. The audio's authenticity can be determined through forensic analysis. But given these serious allegations and counter-allegations, I'm not comfortable changing the custody arrangement at this time. Your Honor, Owen started. Motion denied. The temporary custody order stands. Miss Whitmore, you'll continue supervised visitation only. Next hearing is scheduled for 6 weeks from now, pending the outcome of both investigations. The gavel fell. Final. Devastating. I walked out of that courtroom in a daze. Owen was talking, explaining appellate options, but I couldn't hear him. Couldn't hear anything over the roaring in my ears. They'd won again. Somehow, they always won. Grace, Bryn said gently, we need to go. But I was staring across the courthouse lobby, at Derek and Vanessa, standing by the windows. Derek looked uncomfortable, but Vanessa was smiling. That same calm, satisfied smile. She saw me watching and raised her hand in a small wave. Something inside me snapped. I walked toward them. Bryn tried to stop me, but I shook her off. How did you do it? I asked when I reached Vanessa. The audio. How did you fake my voice that well? Technology is amazing these days. Vanessa said, you'd be surprised what you can do with a few speech samples and the right software. You poisoned me. You nearly killed my daughter. Prove it. She tilted her head. Oh, wait, you tried, and the judge didn't care. Derek shifted uncomfortably. Vanessa, let's just go. Why? She looked at him. She can't hurt us. She has nothing. She is nothing. I laughed, actually laughed, because she was right. They'd taken everything. But in doing so, they'd freed me from the need to play by rules. You're right, I said. I have nothing left to lose, and that makes me very dangerous. Vanessa's smile faltered, just for a second. Are you threatening me? No, I'm promising you. I leaned close enough that only she could hear. I know that house better than anyone. I designed every room, every closet, every corner. And there are things in that house even Derek doesn't know about. Hidden things. Secret things. I walked away before she could respond, Bryn hurrying to catch up. What was that about? Bryn asked. What hidden things? The panic room. I said, when I'd redesigned the mansion 4 years ago, I'd built a hidden panic room behind the master closet. It was my secret project, something I'd never told Derek about. The entrance was concealed behind a false wall panel. Inside was a small space with emergency supplies, a phone line, and most importantly, security monitors showing every room in the house. I'd installed them when Derek first started acting suspicious. Told myself it was just precaution. Now, those cameras had been recording everything for months. If Vanessa's been planning this for years, she's been careful. I told Bryn as we drove back to Manhattan. But nobody's perfect. Somewhere in those recordings is proof we can use. How do we access them? Owen asked when we explained the plan. We break in, I said simply. Owen shook his head. Grace, you can't. That's illegal entry. Anything we find would be inadmissible. Then we don't use it in court. We use it for leverage. We find something so damning that Derek and Vanessa have no choice but to give me back my daughter. It's too dangerous, Bryn argued. If they catch you, they won't. I know that house better than anyone. I know when the cleaners come, when Derek goes to work, when Vanessa's routines are... I looked at both of them. I'm doing this, with or without your help. Bryn sighed. You're insane, but I'm in... I'll provide legal cover if you're caught, Owen said reluctantly. But Grace, please be careful. We planned it for Tuesday night. Derek had a business trip to Boston. Travis confirmed he'd be gone until Wednesday morning. Vanessa would be alone. I waited until midnight. Dressed in dark clothes, my hair pulled back. Bryn drove, parking 3 blocks away. 30 minutes, she said. If you're not out in 30 minutes, I'm calling the police. I walked to my own house like a thief, used my old key, praying Derek hadn't changed the locks. The key turned. The door opened. Inside, everything looked the same but felt different, like visiting a museum of your own life. I moved through rooms I decorated, past furniture I'd chosen. Each step was a memory and a knife wound. The master bedroom was on the 3rd floor. I climbed the stairs silently, listening for movement. The house was quiet. Vanessa's bedroom light was off. I slipped into the master closet, found the panel I'd installed, pressed the hidden latch. The wall swung open. The panic room was small, maybe 8 by 10 feet. Monitors lined one wall, showing grainy footage from cameras throughout the house. A desk held the recording equipment, hard drives storing months of footage. I started downloading files to my laptop. Bedroom, kitchen, study, living room, hours of recordings. Too much to review here. Then I saw it. A second hidden panel in the panic room, one I hadn't installed. My breath caught. I pressed against it. It swung open. Behind it was a space I'd never seen. A real room, maybe 12 feet square. And every wall was covered in photographs of me. Me leaving the house. Me at client meetings, awnings, me at doctor's appointments. Years of surveillance. Hundreds of photos. In the center of the room, a desk. On the desk, notebooks filled with careful handwriting. Plans. Timelines. Details of how to destroy my life. And a folder labeled Final Phase. My hands shook as I opened it. Inside were notes about pregnancy complications, research on substances that could cause premature labor, orders for the chemicals found in my prenatal vitamins, and a final page, dated 3 days ago. If Grace becomes too problematic, Arrange accident. Make it look natural. Heart attack from stress. Take custody of baby. Split insurance payout with D. D. Derek. My husband had been planning to kill me. I heard footsteps on the stairs. Panicking, I grabbed the folder in my laptop, closed the hidden panels as quietly as possible, but there was no time to get out of the panic room. The bedroom door opened. Vanessa's voice. I know you're here. Grace, I saw you on the camera outside. I held my breath, praying the panic room entrance was properly concealed. You were right, Vanessa continued, moving through the bedroom. This house does have secrets. I found your little spy room 2 months ago. Been having fun reading your old notes, looking through your designs. She was getting closer to the closet. Here's the thing about secrets, though. They only work if nobody else knows them. Her voice was right outside the panel now. And once I found your room, I made it mine. The panel began to open. I was trapped. No way out. Nowhere to run. Vanessa's face appeared in the opening. She smiled. Hello, Grace. And she was holding a gun. Time slowed down. I saw every detail with crystal clarity. The gun, a small black automatic, Vanessa's finger on the trigger, the cold calculation in her gray eyes. You should have stayed away, Vanessa said softly. Now I have to accelerate the timeline. You're going to kill me. My voice was surprisingly steady. Not here. Too messy. Too obvious. She gestured with the gun. Out? Slowly. I climbed out of the panic room, my laptop and the folder clutched against my chest. My mind raced, looking for options. We were on the 3rd floor. No easy escape. My phone was in my pocket, but Bryn wouldn't call police for another 15 minutes. Put those on the bed, Vanessa ordered. I set down my laptop and the folder. Vanessa glanced at them, her expression hardening when she saw what I'd found. So you know, she said. Well, that simplifies things. Derek was going to kill me. I couldn't keep the disbelief out of my voice. He was actually going to do it. Don't act so surprised. You had to know this wasn't going to end well for you. Vanessa moved closer, the gun never wavering. Derek's weak, always has been, but he's desperate, and desperate people do terrible things. He's your brother, half-brother, and a means to an end. Nothing more. Vanessa smiled. You want to know the real story? Grace, the whole truth. Despite the gun, despite the fear, I needed to understand. Tell me. My mother was Harrison's secretary, 19 years old. Beautiful, naive. He promised her everything. Then she got pregnant, and suddenly she was a problem to be solved. Vanessa's voice was flat, emotionless. He paid her off, $50,000 to disappear, to never contact him again, to raise me alone in poverty while he lived here in luxury. That's horrible, but I'm not finished. The gun lifted slightly. My mother did her best, worked 3 jobs, tried to give me a good life, but she was bitter, angry, and she made sure I knew who was responsible for our suffering. Harrison Whitmore and his perfect family. I could see the story taking shape, the childhood of resentment, the years of planning. When my mother died 5 years ago, she left me letters, proof of the affair, photos, everything I'd need to destroy Harrison. Vanessa's smile was cold. I spent 2 years researching this family, learning everything, found out about Derek's business problems, his gambling debts, his desperate need for money. So you approached him, blackmailed him first, then made him a deal. Help me get access to the family fortune, and I'd split it with him. Help me destroy you, and I'd make sure his debts disappeared. Why me? The question burst out. I never did anything to you, Dan. You were in the way. Derek was married to you, which meant I couldn't claim my rightful place in this family. And more than that, her expression twisted with something ugly. You had everything. The name, the status, the man. Everything my mother deserved and never got. So yes, I wanted to destroy you. It wasn't just business. Grace. It was personal. My phone vibrated in my pocket. A text. Probably Bryn, checking in. Vanessa noticed. Take out your phone and slowly toss it to me. I did. She caught it, glanced at the screen. Your friend wants to know if you're okay. How sweet. Vanessa typed a response. I'm telling her you're fine and need more time. That'll buy us an hour. What are you going to do? Originally, I was going to wait, let you suffer through months of legal battles, slowly losing every custody hearing until you gave up. Let grief and depression do the work for me. Vanessa tilted her head. But now you've seen too much. Know too much. So we're going to take a drive. You're going to have a tragic accident. Grief-struck mother, not paying attention, drives off the road into the lake. No one will believe that. Sure they will. You've been unstable. Remember the recordings, the threats, the custody battles. Everyone knows you're falling apart. This is just the logical conclusion. Behind Vanessa, in the hallway, I saw movement, a shadow. Someone was in the house. I kept talking, keeping Vanessa's attention on me. Derek will know. He'll know you killed me. Derek will be relieved. With you gone, there's no custody fight. We get full control of Lily and her trust fund. And eventually, when he's no longer useful, Derek will have his own tragic accident. Vanessa's smile widened. I've been patient for 30 years. Grace, I can wait a little longer to get everything I deserve. The shadow in the hallway resolved into a person. Travis. He held his phone up, recording. I kept my eyes on Vanessa, trying not to give him away. You won't get away with this, I said. Too many people know. Bryn, Owen, Detective Collins. None of them have proof, just theories. And once you're gone, the investigation will fizzle out. These things always do. Vanessa gestured toward the stairs. Let's go. Move. I moved, walked toward the stairs, my mind racing. If I could get outside, get to where Bryn could see me. That's when Travis stepped out. Stop, Vanessa spun, gun raising. Travis, what are you doing here? Stopping you. He held up his phone. I've been recording this whole conversation, every confession, everything. For the first time, Vanessa looked uncertain. You're supposed to be in Boston with Derek. I lied. Grace asked me to watch the house. Travis stepped closer. It's over. Vanessa, put the gun down. You think recording me means anything? I'll claim you edited it, faked it, but her voice lacked confidence. Maybe, but I also called the police 5 minutes ago. They're on their way. In the distance, I heard sirens. Real or bluff, I couldn't tell. Vanessa's face hardened. Then I have nothing to lose. She raised the gun, pointing it at Travis. I moved without thinking, grabbed the nearest thing, a heavy crystal vase from the hallway table, threw it at Vanessa. It hit her shoulder. She stumbled, the gun swinging wild. Travis lunged forward, grabbing for the weapon. They struggled. I ran for the stairs, shouting for help. Behind me, a gunshot cracked through the house. I spun. Travis was on the ground, blood spreading across his shirt. Vanessa stood over him, the gun in her hand, breathing hard. Now you've made it worse, she said. Looking at me, I hear. Now I have to. The front door burst open. Police officers flooded in, guns drawn. Drop the weapon, drop it now. Vanessa froze. For a heartbeat, I thought she might shoot anyway, might choose to end this in violence. Then she dropped the gun and put her hands up. He attacked me, she said immediately. I was defending myself. But Travis was still conscious, still holding his phone. It's all recorded, he gasped. Everything. The police arrested Vanessa on the spot. Paramedics rushed in for Travis. Detective Collins appeared, taking my statement while EMTs checked me over. You were supposed to wait for legal channels, she said, though her tone was more resigned than angry. Legal channels were taking my daughter. I looked at the folder, still on the bed, the evidence of murder plans. Now you have everything you need. Detective Collins picked up the folder, flipping through pages. Her expression grew darker with each sheet. Attempted murder, conspiracy, stalking. Oh, she's going away for a long time. What about Derek? We'll bring him in for questioning, if he was complicit in the murder plot. She left the sentence unfinished. I sat on the stairs, exhausted and shaking. It was over. Really over. My phone, retrieved from Vanessa's pocket, buzzed. Owen, I answered. Grace, I just heard. Are you okay? I'm alive. Travis is hurt but stable. Vanessa's arrested. I closed my eyes. What happens now? Now we get your daughter back. The emergency custody hearing happened 72 hours later. This time, the courtroom was packed. Media had gotten wind of Vanessa's arrest, the evidence of conspiracy and attempted murder. This wasn't just a custody dispute anymore. It was national news. I sat beside Owen, dressed in a simple blue dress, my hands folded. Across the aisle, Derek sat alone. Vanessa was in jail awaiting trial. Patricia Combs had been replaced by a public defender. The judge was new too, Judge Margaret Walsh, known for being tough but fair. She reviewed the evidence with careful attention. The recordings Travis had made, the folder detailing murder plans, the forensic analysis showing the audio recordings used against me were AI-generated fakes. "Mr. Whitmore," Judge Walsh said, looking at Derek over her reading glasses, "did you have knowledge of Vanessa Whitmore's plans to harm your wife?" Derek's lawyer started to answer, but Derek waved him off. He stood, looking more defeated than I'd ever seen him. "Yes," he said quietly. "I knew." Gasps rippled through the courtroom. Even Owen looked surprised. "You knew she planned to kill Grace Whitmore?" "Not at first. At first, I thought we were just," Derek's voice broke. "I thought we were just going to get divorced. Divide assets, move on." But Vanessa kept escalating. The custody fight, the fake evidence, the poisoning. By the time I realized how far she'd go, I was in too deep. "You could have come forward," Judge Walsh said coldly. "Warned your wife. Contacted authorities." I was afraid of Vanessa, of exposure, of losing everything. Derek looked at me. "Grace, I'm sorry. I know that doesn't fix anything, but I'm sorry." I said nothing. His apology meant nothing compared to what he'd put me through. Judge Walsh set down her papers. "Given the evidence presented, I'm reversing the temporary custody order. Full custody is granted to Grace Whitmore immediately. Mr. Whitmore, you'll have supervised visitation only, pending criminal investigation." She looked at Derek with obvious disgust. "You knowingly allowed your wife to be poisoned, your child to be put at risk, and conspired to cover up attempted murder. You're fortunate you're not in handcuffs right now." Derek slumped in his seat. His replacement lawyer was already talking about plea bargains. I walked out of that courthouse with my daughter's custody secure. Bryn hugged me tight. Owen was already on the phone with the hospital, arranging for me to pick up Lily. "It's over," Bryn said. "You won." But it didn't feel like winning. It felt like surviving. Lily came home 3 days later. She'd gained weight in the NICU, was breathing on her own, passing in all her tests. The doctors called her a miracle baby. I called her my reason to keep going. We couldn't stay at the mansion. Too many memories. Too much pain. I sold it within a month, taking the profits and buying a small house in Vermont. Far from Greenwich. Far from Derek. Far from everything that had happened. Bryn helped me move. Owen handled the legal details. Travis, recovered from his gunshot wound, testified against both Derek and Vanessa in exchange for immunity. The trial was brief. Vanessa was convicted of attempted murder, conspiracy, stalking, and fraud. She got 20 years. Derek pled guilty to conspiracy and obstruction of justice. 7 years. Harrison Whitmore resigned from his companies in disgrace. Cecilia filed for divorce. And I started over. My design business slowly rebuilt itself. I worked from home, taking clients online, creating beautiful spaces for other people while putting my own life back together. Lily thrived. She hit every milestone, exceeded expectations. When she smiled, I saw hope instead of trauma. But the nightmares stayed. The sound of Vanessa's voice, the feeling of being trapped, the knowledge that people I trusted had wanted me dead. On particularly bad nights, I'd hold Lily and whisper promises, that I'd keep her safe, that I'd teach her to be strong, that I'd never let anyone hurt her the way I'd been hurt. 6 months after the trial, I stood in the kitchen of my Vermont home, sunlight streaming through windows that overlooked Green Mountains. Lily was in her bouncer on the counter, cooing at the mobile above her. She was healthy now, growing strong. Her premature birth just a memory of fear I tried not to revisit. "You're getting so big," I told her, touching her tiny hand, her fingers wrapped around mine instinctively. The doorbell rang. I wasn't expecting anyone. Through the peephole, I saw Bryn holding a bakery box and two coffees. "Surprise visit," she said when I opened the door. "I brought sustenance." We sat at my small kitchen table, Lily between us in her seat. The house was modest compared to the mansion, just 3 bedrooms and a cozy living space. But it was mine, truly mine. "How are you really doing?" Bryn asked, cutting through small talk the way she always did. "Some days are better than others." I sipped by my coffee. "I started therapy. Should have done it months ago." "That's good, really good." Bryn pulled out her laptop. "I have something to show you. The article I wrote about everything that happened. It's going to print next week." I read through it carefully. Bryn had captured the story with journalistic precision while protecting the parts that were too raw, too personal. She'd focused on the legal aspects, the systematic manipulation, the poisoning scheme. My name was changed. Lily's existence was barely mentioned. "It's perfect," I said. "Thank you for not making it sensational. This isn't entertainment. It's a cautionary tale." Bryn closed the laptop. "3 other women have already reached out to me. Similar stories. Husbands who gaslit them. Families who turned against them. Your story is helping people realize they're not alone." I hadn't thought about that my pain could serve a purpose beyond my own healing. "Maybe I could talk to them," I said slowly. "When I'm ready." "Whenever you're ready. No pressure." Bryn looked at Lily, who was watching us with wide eyes. "She's beautiful, Grace, and she's lucky, because she has a mother who fought like hell to keep her safe." After Bryn left, I thought about that, about what it meant to fight, to survive, to rebuild from absolute destruction. Dr. Patricia Moore, my therapist, had asked me in our last session what I wanted from life now. "I want peace," I'd said. "Real peace, not just the absence of chaos." "What does peace look like to you?" I'd struggled to answer. Peace felt like a luxury I hadn't earned yet. But sitting in my sunny kitchen with Lily gurgling happily, I thought maybe I was starting to understand. Peace looked like mornings without fear, like building a business on my own terms, like choosing who got access to my life. The design work kept me busy. I'd specialized in a niche I understood intimately, now creating safe spaces for people recovering from trauma. My portfolio included women's shelters, therapy offices, homes for domestic violence survivors. "You have a gift for this," one client told me. "These spaces feel protective without feeling like prisons." I knew the difference because I'd lived it. One afternoon, Owen called with unexpected news. "Derek wants to write you a letter," he said. "He's asked permission to send it through me. You don't have to read it. I can return it unopened." I thought about it. Part of me wanted nothing to do with Derek, but another part, the part that was trying to heal, felt curious. "Send it," I said. "I'll decide after I see it." The letter arrived 3 days later. I waited until Lily was asleep before opening it. "Grace," it began, "I don't expect forgiveness. I don't deserve it. But I need you to know that I see clearly now what I couldn't see then. I was a coward. I chose money and status over integrity and love. I let Vanessa manipulate me because it was easier than standing up to her. And in doing so, I became complicit in something monstrous. You were right to fight, right to expose us, right to protect Lily with everything you had. I'm writing because I want you to know I've accepted responsibility. Not just legally, but morally. I'm using my time here to understand how I became the kind of man who could betray someone he claimed to love. It's painful work. I hope someday Lily will be willing to hear from me. Not now, maybe not for years. But when she's old enough to understand that people can fail catastrophically and still try to become better, I won't ask you to forgive me. Just to know that I'm trying. Derek. I read it twice, looking for manipulation, for excuses. But it seemed genuine. Not redemption, just acknowledgement. I filed it away with all the legal documents, the evidence, the records of the worst year of my life. Someday Lily would want to know about her father. When that day came, I'd give her the full truth. The good, the bad, the complicated. For now, I focused on building a life worth living. Winter gave way to spring in Vermont. And with the changing season, I felt something shift in myself too. The hypervigilance began to ease. The nightmares became less frequent. Lily was sleeping through the night now, and so was I. "You look different," Dr. Moore observed during one of our sessions. "More settled in your body." "I feel different," I admitted. "Like I'm finally inhabiting my life instead of just surviving it." "That's significant progress, Grace." 6 months ago, you were in pure survival mode. Your nervous system was stuck in threat response. Now you're beginning to heal. The healing wasn't linear. Some days I'd still panic when I heard unexpected footsteps. Still checked locks 3 times before bed. Still felt my chest tighten when I saw a woman with chestnut hair at the grocery store. But other days, I felt strong, capable, like the worst thing that could happen had already happened, and I'd survived it. Bryn visited often, usually bringing food and gossip from the city. She'd decided to leave New York and was looking at houses in Vermont. "The city lost its appeal," she explained one afternoon as we walked with Lily in her stroller around the small downtown. "After watching everything you went through, I realized I was chasing the wrong things. Status, bylines, the next bigger story. What are you chasing now?" "Peace, community, a life that doesn't make me anxious all the time." She smiled. "Plus, you need backup. Someone to watch Lily when you have client meetings. Someone to drink wine with when the PTSD flares up. You'd really move here for me. I'd move here for us, for the life we both deserve." Something warm bloomed in my chest. Not just gratitude, but hope. The kind of hope that believed good things could still happen. My design business continued to grow. I hired an assistant, a young woman named Rebecca who understood boundaries and respected my need for control. We worked remotely, coordinating projects across 3 states. "You're getting a reputation," Rebecca told me during one of our video calls. "People are seeking you out specifically. They want spaces designed by someone who understands trauma." Is that what we're calling it now? Trauma-informed disease? No. Why not? It's accurate. You're creating environments that help people heal. That's valuable. I thought about the spaces I designed over the past months. A therapy practice with soft lighting and multiple exits so clients never felt trapped. A women's shelter with private rooms that locked from the inside. A home office for a domestic violence survivor with clear sightlines and reinforced doors. Each project was a piece of my own healing, translated into walls and windows and light. One evening, as I was putting Lily to bed, she grabbed my face with both hands and babbled something that almost sounded like "Mama." My eyes filled with tears. "That's right, baby. Mama's here. Mama's always going to be here." I thought about the moment in the NICU when they'd taken her from me, when I'd thought I'd lost everything, how desperate and powerless I'd felt. Now she was here, healthy and safe, calling for me in her own way. I'd fought for this, risked everything for this, and it was worth it. The anniversary of Vanessa's arrest came and went. I didn't celebrate, but I acknowledged it, marked it as a turning point in the calendar of my life. "You survived something that would have destroyed most people," Dr. Moore said. "That's not nothing. Sometimes it doesn't feel like enough, like I should be more healed by now, less broken. Healing isn't about being unbroken. It's about building a life with your scars instead of in spite of them." I like that. Building with my scars. It felt honest in a way that moving on never did. Owen called with updates on Derek's case. He'd accepted a plea deal, 7 years with possibility of parole in 5. Harrison had provided restitution from the family estate, ensuring Lily's future was secure. "Derek's been asking about Lily," Owen said carefully. "Not for visitation, just updates, photos. Is that something you're comfortable with?" I thought about it. Monthly updates only. Photos but no identifying information about where we live, and only through you. That's fair. He understands the boundaries. After hanging up, I looked at Lily playing on her mat. She was 8 months old now, trying to crawl, babbling constantly, full of personality. Derek had missed all of this, would miss years more. That was his consequence, his loss. But Lily deserved to know someday that her father cared, even if from a distance, even if he'd failed her in the most fundamental ways. I took a photo of her laughing at her reflection in a mirror, sent it to Owen with a brief note, 8 months, healthy and happy. It wasn't forgiveness, just acknowledgement that Lily's story would always include her father, and I could control the narrative without denying the facts. The morning of Lily's second birthday, I woke to her calling Mama Mama from her room, not babbling anymore, but real words, demanding and joyful. I found her standing in her crib, arms outstretched, grinning with all her tiny teeth showing. "Good morning, birthday girl," I said, scooping her up. She wrapped her arms around my neck. "Cake, after lunch, and presents, and when Aunt Bryn gets here." Bryn had bought a house 3 blocks away 6 months ago. She worked from home now, writing longer pieces for magazines, covering stories she actually cared about instead of chasing sensationalism. The house was decorated with streamers and balloons. Nothing elaborate, just a simple celebration for a toddler who thought everything was magic. My business had expanded enough that I'd hired 2 more designers. We'd developed a methodology, a whole approach to trauma-informed spaces that other firms were starting to copy. I'd been approached about writing a book. "You should do it," Bryn said when she arrived with an enormous stuffed elephant. "You have something important to say." "Maybe. I'm not sure I'm ready to be that public." "Then wait until you are." "But Grace, you turned your worst experience into something that helps people. That's worth sharing." The party was small. Bryn, Owen and his wife, Dr. Moore, a few neighbors Lily played with. No family, because Derek's family had ceased to exist in any meaningful way. Harrison had died 8 months ago. Heart attack. Sudden and final. I'd felt nothing when Owen told me. Not satisfaction, not sadness, just the closing of a chapter. Cecilia lived in Florida now, remarried, pretending her first family had never existed. We were Lily's family now. Me, Bryn, Owen, the community we'd built. After cake and presents, after Lily had worn herself out and fallen asleep surrounded by new toys, Bryn and I sat on the back porch with wine. "Do you ever think about what your life would have been if none of this had happened?" Bryn asked. "Sometimes, but I can't imagine it anymore. That Grace feels like a different person. She was, you've been forged in fire." I looked at the mountains in the distance, green and ancient and unmoved by human drama. "I don't think I was weak before. I think I was naive. I believed people were fundamentally good. That love was enough. And now I know love is complicated. That people can love you and still harm you. That sometimes the most loving thing you can do is protect yourself." I sipped my wine. "I also know I'm stronger than I ever imagined. That I can lose everything and rebuild. That rock bottom has bedrock underneath." "That's profound. That's therapy." We laughed, and it felt good. Normal. Like maybe I was finally becoming myself again. Not the person I was before, but someone new, someone harder and softer at the same time. A week later, I got a call from Detective Collins. "I wanted you to hear this from me," she said. "Vanessa attempted suicide in prison. She survived, but she's been moved to a psychiatric facility." I sat down slowly. "How do you feel about that?" "I don't know. Should I feel something?" "There's no should. Whatever you feel is valid." I waited for emotion to surface. Satisfaction, pity, anger, but I just felt tired. "She was a person in pain who chose to inflict that pain on others," I said finally. "I hope she gets help, but she's not my responsibility anymore." After hanging up, I realized that was true. Vanessa wasn't part of my story anymore, except as the antagonist in a finished chapter. Her continued existence or suffering didn't affect my life. That night, I wrote the first page of the book Bryn had suggested. Not a memoir exactly, but a guide. How to recognize manipulation, how to trust your instincts, how to rebuild when everything falls apart. I wrote about the red flags I'd ignored, the ways Derek and Vanessa had systematically isolated me, the moment I'd realized I had to save myself because no one else would. And I wrote about the other side, the peace I'd found in Vermont, the business I'd built, the daughter who called my name every morning. "This isn't a story about revenge," I wrote. "It's a story about reclamation, about taking back the pieces of yourself that someone tried to destroy and building something new from them." 2 years and 3 months after my life fell apart, I stood on the shore of a Vermont lake at sunset with Lily in my arms. She was almost 2.5 now, talking in full sentences, full of opinions about everything. "Pretty," she said, pointing at the orange sky reflected in the water. "Very pretty. You pretty too, Mama." I hugged her closer. Thank you, baby. The book was finished. Rebuilding After Betrayal. A Guide to Reclaiming Your Life would publish in 3 months. I'd done interviews already, talking about trauma-informed design and surviving domestic manipulation without revealing the full depth of what I'd endured. Some stories stayed private. This was mine and Lily's. My business was thriving. We just finished a women's shelter in Boston, a project that felt like coming full circle, creating safety for others the way I'd had to create it for myself. Bryn walked up behind us. You two ready for dinner? We'd established routines. Sunday dinners together, shared childcare, the kind of family you build instead of inherit. As we walked back to the house, Lily between us holding both our hands, I thought about the letter Derek had sent last month. He was up for parole review in 2 years. Wanted to know if supervised visitation might be possible when he got out. I hadn't answered yet. Wasn't sure what the answer was. What are you thinking about? Bryn asked. Whether people can really change, whether they deserve second chances. Those are big questions. Yeah, Lily tugged on my hand. Mama, play. In a minute, sweetheart. We reached the house, my small sanctuary filled with the life I'd built from ruins. Through the window, I could see the kitchen where we'd make dinner, the living room where Lily's toys were scattered, the home office where I designed spaces for other survivors. It wasn't the grand mansion I'd lost, but it was mine in ways that mansion never had been. Later, after Lily was asleep and Bryn had gone home, I sat at my desk and opened Derek's letter again. He'd written about the therapy he'd done in prison, about understanding his role not just in what happened with Vanessa, but in the marriage before that, the subtle ways he'd diminished me, the expectations he'd placed on me to fit into his family's mold. I don't expect forgiveness, he'd written, but I hope someday you'll believe that I'm genuinely trying to become someone better, someone Lily could know without harm. I picked up a pen and paper, started writing a response. Derek, Lily is thriving, she's smart, funny, strong-willed, everything I could hope for. As for your question about future contact, I don't know yet. That decision belongs to her as much as it belongs to me. When she's old enough to understand, I'll tell her about you, about what happened, and I'll let her decide if she wants you in her life. Until then, I'll continue to send updates. Not for you. For her, because she deserves to know her father cared enough to change. Whether you actually have changed, time will tell. Grace. I sealed the envelope and addressed it to Owen to forward. Then I went to Lily's room and watched her sleep, her small chest rising and falling, peaceful and safe. You'll never doubt that you're loved, I whispered. You'll never question your worth. You'll grow up knowing that your mother fought for you, that she chose you over everything else. I thought about the Grace who'd stood in that mansion 3 years ago, pregnant and terrified, being humiliated by people she'd trusted, how far away she seemed now. That Grace had been broken. But she'd also been the beginning of this Grace, the one who knew her strength, who'd rebuilt everything from nothing, who'd learned that surviving was just the start. I'd turned pain into purpose, trauma into healing spaces, betrayal into boundaries. Not because I was special, because I'd refused to let what happened define me. The mountains outside Lily's window stood dark against the fading sky. Tomorrow they'd still be there, and so would I. Stronger than before, scarred but whole, not just surviving anymore, living.